Running a small business is all about leadership. Welcome to Leadership Live, Talking Small Business, the podcast where you'll learn from successful entrepreneurs and business owners about how to thrive, not just survive, and make more money in any environment. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO, and I am a leading business advisor and founder of the Small Business Pro University. My co-host, Arthur Jones, is lead consultant at the Art of Standing Out. We facilitate important conversations with high-performing guest experts who share some of their secrets. Today's episode is about demystifying the diversity certification conundrum. Our guest knows everything about the diversity certification and contracting process because she has more than 30 years experience in the space, working on all sides with many different organizations and successfully helping people navigate and gain access to significant contracts on the federal and state levels. Stephanie also has a course on the Small Business University where she shares some of her expertise. She's a sought-after speaker on many topics. I'd like to invite my co-host, Art Jones, to come on out and say hello.
Absolutely. I'm always happy to sit in the seat next to you with our great guest. And when it's Tuesday night, it's always Leadership Live at 8:05. And when it comes to leadership, there's no shortage of talented leaders that have joined us on this show. And tonight is no different. We have Dr. Stephanie D. Burroughs, who has a really long and successful career helping people demystify the diversity certification process. But more importantly, we're going to talk about the human side of Dr. Burroughs first, because she's got really an interesting story of the journey that got her to where she is today. And in no small part of that journey, her Marine Corps dad played a large part of that. So, without further ado, Dr. Burroughs, welcome to the show.
Thank you all so much. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. The humanization of the brand, when we see Dr. Stephanie Burroughs, we see the work that you do with so many people seeking to get their MeBe, Weebie, DB, right? Seeking to get certified for government contracts, city, state, and local, and federal government contracts. That's hard work. And you as the leader of your business and a leader of that community of people seeking to get those certifications, it must take some real grit to be able to lead those campaigns, to get them over the hurdles, and so many hurdles, to achieve getting on board with those federal contracts. Take us back to when you were a little girl. Dad's a Marine and he's retired now, or he's still in the Corps. And he's giving you lessons learned so you could grow up and be a leader, like a Marine would always lead their troops.
Well, he was out of the service by the time I was born, but you wouldn't have known it. My mother, most saw her as a very demure person, but they had no clue. The two of them were of the same mind when it came to raising me. And there were so many lessons. One of them, perseverance. You could not come home with an excuse. I even say this to clients today when they use the word but. I'm like, no buts. But is the precursor to an excuse. So on the other side of the word but is the excuse. But I, but it, but they, but it. I couldn't say that word. They started me working very early. I like to tell people, as soon as I could crawl, it was like they put me to work. Here, take that over there to your dad. Take that over to your mom. So you literally crawling with one hand and two knees, and the other one is holding whatever they gave you to take. That's when they started me, okay? They were preparing me. I remember sitting at 3 years old on a really high metal stool, and they were teaching me to dry the silverware. Now, what are children doing at 3 years old today? I don't think so. So It was always something to do with work. In fact, they told me I'm the first, so I'm the one that caught everything. Okay. And one of the things I remember them telling me very young is if you live here, you have to work here. And work me they did.
Well, you know that the Marine Corps boot camp is legendary. And when Marines go through boot camp, they become a Marine for life. And no doubt your dad and your mom put you through a kind of Marine Corps boot camp as a child. And can you talk about how it served you as you went through your career and built the successful business practice that you have today?
Well, all of the lessons that they taught, being resilient, getting things done and done well to the best of your ability. Now, my thinking of what my best of my ability was different from theirs. I'll never forget one night, I got dragged out of the bed, yelled, screamed at, and what have you, at midnight. And he took every dish out of the closet and put it in the sink because one glass had a smudge on it. Everything came out and was put in the sink. And at midnight on a school night, I'm up washing these dishes and drying them and putting them back. Okay. So for me, it's the same thing in all of the work that I did. I think to a certain extent, it kind of hindered me a little bit because I could not ever see myself years ago as having done everything right. It was always something more that could have been done. It was brought to my attention when I was at Rutgers University and I was the director of procurement programs for the Small Business Development Centers, New Jersey Small Business Development Centers. And I would put on these big expos each year. And each year I was able to get more and more people, a team of folks, whether they work for me directly or for others to help me with it. But I always, at the end of the day, would have a list of things we could have done better. You know, we would all sit around and we would debrief and talk about what are some of the challenges so that we would know how to overcome it the next time. But it was the woman in charge of the SBDC, statewide SBDC, who said to me one day, and I love her dearly, Brenda Hopper, she said, Stephanie, you did an awesome job. Your team did an awesome job. And she would tell me this each year. She said, will you just rest in that? Just receive that and rest in it. And that was something, was because the way I was taught, you can always do better. That wasn't good enough. You can do more, you can do better. And that stayed with me. So it's with me today, but having been very much grounded in a mindfulness practice, I'm now able to be a little bit more, and this is something many of us don't practice, being compassionate towards ourselves.
We always talk about having empathy for the other person, but I think leaders have a really highly tuned sense of emotional intelligence. And that means that they spend as much time thinking about where they are and how they feel and how that made them feel and nurturing that sense, because it's like the spidey senses, right? When they feel or sense and think something, it tells them how to interact with people and how to do it well. It sounds like you had a breakthrough with a mentor's help that helped you move from being the Marine Corps young adult and carrying all that leadership and all that discipline and character with you, but also giving yourself the ability to celebrate successes that, you know, because there's an old saying, I don't know if it was Plato or Aristotle that said it first, perfect is the enemy of the good. It means like, stop trying to be perfect, just do it. Just get it done sometimes is better than trying to be perfect. It sounds like that lesson from that mentor that you had was turned a corner for you to go and celebrate some of your successes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so good that people won't know that it's not perfect. It's interesting. You know, we've only talked about a really short part of your life, right? The early days when you're a wee little one and getting into the early parts of your career. But you've already talked about the discipline, the commitment to getting the job done, accepting responsibility, being the leader, being the oldest of, you know, three children, and leading the pack, so to speak, because you had to, because that's the way. But talk about leadership on Leadership Live on Tuesday nights, accepting responsibility to lead, to accept a commitment, to accept the responsibility to get the job done are all things that leaders have to do. Leaders have to have that highly tuned sense of emotional intelligence to know how they feel. So in the heat of battle, they can perform well. But that highly tuned sense of emotional intelligence tells them how other people feel, so they know how to communicate well. And your business is really built on the notion of being able to communicate with an audience of people that want knowledge from you. And I know we've talked a little bit, and I'd like to expand on that conversation now about grit and the model that you have built. That's kind of the platform for the conversation you have with the audience you serve about, I had to write it down because it was grounded, intentional, resilient, and tenacious.
So it's grounded, resilient. It's the word grit. The acronym is grounded, resilient, intentional, and tenacious. GRIT.
I can't spell. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Art.
Got-
I hear you. I know people get tongue-tied with it. Our grit is our gift.
Talk a little bit about grit with the GRIT, grit.
Make the word grit an acronym, because I put it out there one day on Facebook years ago, and I was like, I am the grit factor. And what really blew my mind was another mentor of mine back, quit fast in a hurry. You sure are. When I first got put into this position of going out here and I was doing contract compliance monitoring on construction sites in 1980. I was all the 5 feet strong, 126, 25 pounds, and soaking wet, and there was nothing but males, and they didn't look like me, and they were tough. And so when we talk about the racism and discrimination, I grew up with a lot of that, but boy, oh boy, in that particular environment, it was at a whole nother level, at totally a different level. But see, what I didn't realize was, while as much as I couldn't get out of that house fast enough, put it to you that way. It took me years and years and years later, decades, to realize that the only way I could work in that environment and continue to do so and thrive in it was because of the lessons I learned at home. So while I was angry with them and I didn't like them at all, and I wanted to just get away, it was that training, that upbringing that gave me my grit. That being able to survive and thrive. How can you determine what your growth has been and what the steps are that you took to grow into that space, wherever that is for you? And then it starts all over again. The cycle repeats.
It's very powerful. You're what you're calling grounded, I would call integrity, and I think they're the same. Because it's the things whose shoulders do you stand on to get here? What mentors, what people, what friends, church people, college roommates, who are those people that help you become who you are today, that help you stay in your lane, knowing what that lane is and being confident in that space and unwavering, so you don't drift left and you don't drift right. When people see you, they know you're going to be, that's who you are. Yeah, I like to say, standing out from the crowd is simply being more who you already are, because this fingerprint, this one right here, there's not another one like this, not like any other person in the world, right? And we each have that unique fingerprint. And if we just be more who we are, be grounded in who we are.
In who we are, yes.
Now, from what you got to believe in. And that's what Andrew Frazier has done for so many years. And he's now built a business model that is built to help other people do it. Just like the business model that you've built around grit helps people get grounded, be resilient, be intentional, and be tenacious. And let's bring Andrew back into the conversation, because I know he's got a lot of questions to ask you about the business and the course that you guys have built to help other people with their grit and the MeBe Weeby DB process, so they can get certified to get some of that federal, state, and local government business.
Amen.
Welcome
Okay.
back.
All right. Thanks, Art. Hey, Stephanie, how you doing?
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was
Okay,
such a
great.
wonderful surprise when you asked me.
Okay, great. No, it's good to have you on. I know you're a wealth of knowledge and done some great things. And, really when you talk about certification, diversity, contracting, that can be pretty daunting for small business owners. Even myself, I'm certified, haven't really put in for too many contracts, but it's a multi-step process. I guess it starts with getting certified, then you got to find the right opportunity, then you got to submit a proposal for the opportunity, then you got to be awarded, and then you got to deliver upon it. That's like, that's overwhelming just saying it. So let's start at the beginning in terms of getting certified. There's a lot of different places that you could get certified and all these different certifications. How do you figure out what is the right way, what certifications you need, and how to move forward with that?
First things first, what are you selling? Who buys what you sell? How do they buy it? Who's your marketplace? Who are you going to target? How finite can you get in that targeting? Once you know that, then it's a matter of just finding out which certifications they accept. For those who are wondering, well, what's this, what is the certification? Well, you're getting certified that you are indeed who you say you are in your business. The business is owned and run and operated with the majority of the ownership and by either a minority and I would say African American, Hispanic, all that's laid out for you when you open up the documents.
Okay. So
Asian American, Asian, oh gosh, can't think of all of them. Then we have the veteran, then we have the, it just depends on what your marketplace is because the certs are going to be different. What you have for corporate America will not be the same as what you use for federal government. Federal government is not the same as what you would use for your state and local government or public agencies. So you really need to know which ones they use, and then from there we move into who you're going to be certified by, or who you're going to apply for certification with.
Okay, no, that definitely, like you said, you got federal, you got state, you got corporations, you got other organizations, and definitely figuring out the right one is key. And do you need to get certified in everything, or what do you recommend someone for the first time? Should they do multiple ones? Should they just do one?
Well, first of all, again, back to the marketplace. Who are you going to sell to? That I can't say how critical that is. You're not going to get everything. You don't want to do that. What's the point? You're wasting time. You're wasting money. You're losing money because you haven't done anything that in terms of going after the work, doing all this paperwork, unless you have someone else doing that for you. So know who you're going to do business with. I don't suggest that anyone that's brand spanking new come up with go after the feds.
Okay.
Because I've had people say, "Oh, I said, well, who are you going? Who's your marketplace? Who are you doing business with?" Everybody. No, it's not.
Okay. So
you're not going to make a move. Nothing's going to happen if it's everyone. So you have to be really specific, and it doesn't mean you cannot expand later on. Certainly you can expand, but not now, not in the beginning. Start with one, focus, have success in that particular lane. And because you want people to know you for what you do, and you want them so that they're going to pass that information on to others.
So, basically gotta crawl before you walk and walk before you run. That's great advice. Hey, I got certified, great. How come I'm not getting any contracts? So not only do you have to get certified, but you have to find opportunities. And that could be a little bit confusing also because, where do you find the opportunities? you read through the proposals and they don't even seem like they're in English. What do you recommend?
But first of all, if you're a seasoned business owner, you've been out there for a while, and now you decide, that you want to go after some certifications, and you see the benefit in it, and perhaps that's a particular marketplace that you want to step into. Maybe you haven't in the past, going from doing corporate into government, big difference. How they do business is different, very, very, very different. Public agencies like your utilities, I'll use that for an example because it's on my mind that PSE&G has their virtual matchmaker coming up. So look, everything is online. It's not that difficult to find what you're looking for. Now, with the feds, it's a whole different story. So I don't want to talk about them just now, but I will say this. Your state government is more than likely, depending on where you are, to have the contract information online if it's for the state. I'm not talking about the municipalities, the cities, the townships, and so forth. They too, many of them will have information online. Your Department of Education, your Department of Human Services, all of that. There'll be a portal somewhere for state. There'll be hopefully a portal for the townships and cities and so forth, counties. Here in New Jersey, definitely have a portal where you can see what they're putting out. And then there are different ways that you have of being able to go after the business, because some things might not go on that portal. Some things may be under a certain threshold where they can perhaps call 3 people and get a good price, or call 6, depending upon the dollar amount of the expected contract. So there are different avenues that you go. But one thing I will say, and the feds, it's online. Okay, anything $25,000 and above, it's online, and it's under sam.gov. Don't get me started. We can talk about that. That's going to be in the course, or they can contact me because it gets a little bit cloudy there. But I don't want people to think that they got to jump into that right away. You get creamed if you do. So where do you find these RFPs? Well, if you're certified, number one, you're going to be in databases that once you put in your codes, you're going to get notifications about what's come out using the codes that you put in. So your classification codes, that will happen, and you'll easily see them. They're coming to you in your email box. Then you can always go to the portal itself and look and sign up, sign in, register, and go in and you don't have to be certified to do that, by the way.
Okay.
State of New Jersey. If you want to go bid on some contracts with the state, just go to their portal and sign up. Fill out all the information. That's another thing. People have to fill out all of the information. Do not leave blanks. I don't care what you're completing, what type of document you're completing. If it's online, offline, don't leave blanks. If something's not relevant to you or your business or what you do, just put in /A, not applicable.
Want to ask you a few more questions now. You don't have to go this road alone, correct? So there's people and organizations set up to assist you along the way. So what kind of help can you get in navigating this process?
Well, besides myself and others like me, I would definitely point people to the PTACs, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. They're very, very well trained and knowledgeable, some of whom have worked for the federal government in the past, and then later on went on to work for the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. So that's one of the organizations that I would highly recommend for people to go to in terms of understanding how to navigate government contracting. But that's at the more so on the federal level. They are, depending on where you are with the state you're in, some may be a little bit more versed in state level than others might be. On the corporate sector side, I'm going to strongly encourage people to take advantage of the Minority Supplier Development Councils. And so there are councils in all the different states Their affiliate, I'm not sure what they're calling it now, if it's an affiliate or what, but bottom line is, like we have here, the New York, New Jersey Minority Supply Development Council, and they work very closely with the corporations. So that's going to be extremely helpful. Not only that, but they put on a lot of different training programs, which these corporations have, you know, wanted them to do to help the businesses be able to do business with them. So you have to come in at a whole nother level when it comes to the corporate sector. And MSDCs, or the Minority Supply Development Councils, or wherever you are, they also have their own certification, which the corporations do use and honor. And they're the people who will have a good handle on what's coming out, the kind of opportunities that are coming out that are non-government. Then you have your small business development centers all around the country. Every state has them. And even Puerto Rico, and I believe it's the U.S. Virgin Islands, and a couple of others. I think it was Guam maybe has one. I don't remember for sure just now. They can be very, very helpful.
Okay.
As well. And then there's a lot of other organizations. There's so many. These are the really well-established, your PTACs and your SBDCs. They're also do the groundwork for the Small Business Administration in terms of helping small businesses to grow and prosper. And they have tons of programs, all of them do. Oh, there's also Women's Business Center, also because they do Women's Business Center and the Small Business Development Centers do receive a percentage of funding from the Small Business Administration. So that's another organization that's helpful. And then I have GNEC in my head, Greater Newark Enterprise. What is it?
Right.
Greater Newark Enterprise.
Okay.
Council, something to that effect. There's a lot. Your economic development corporations, the counties have them. There's a lot. There's help. All you got to do is put small business, help small business.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a whole lot of places that makes sense, and definitely you can get help. You talked about applications, finding opportunities, submitting proposals. That's always a challenge. What do you recommend when people are submitting proposals beyond just making sure you fill out every box or every single thing they ask for?
Read everything. Don't miss a comma, a period, a colon, semicolon, exclamation. Read every single word.
Okay.
Read everything. If you're brand spanking new and you've never done this before and you feel overwhelmed, maybe you might want to start out as a subcontractor. Okay. Or maybe you want to partner or team with someone. But when I say read, we would tell people read the RFP, if it's an RFP or whatever type of proposal that is coming out. Read it over and over and over, 3 times minimum.
Okay.
Write the questions down as they come to you. But note that more than likely the answer to the question is already in the RFP.
You've been hearing a little bit about what Stephanie's talking about. What's been your experience with minority contracting, either yourself or clients or people you've worked with?
Well, I've got a colleague in Washington, D.C. who does work similar to what Stephanie does. And what I know is that when it's done well and the business has validated that it has value to the city, state, federal government that it serves, there's a lot of money to be earned. But it's not as easy as it seems. I think that's what Stephanie was saying. Just because the federal government awards contracts and you might be a minority contractor doesn't mean that you're going to be the one that wins. And I think you still have to be a solid business. You still have to be operating from a solid business plan, because if they're going to award you a $3 million contract, they want to be sure that you've got a basis for having a business that will be there in 3 years. And so Meeby Weeby DB is an important step in the business building process, but it's It's a piece of the pie. It is not the entire pie.
Okay. Good
That's
points. Good points. Yeah, so definitely you have to be prepared. Like anything else, success is where preparedness meets opportunity. And you can become certified and have opportunities, but if you're not prepared, if you don't have the balance sheet and the financials to be able to support the level of a contract that you could be awarded, they can't award it to you because they have these contracts because they need they have a need, want, or desire that has to be filled, and they need to know that you can fill it. So preparation, as in everything else, is key.
But I like what you said, Art. It's so true. The being, preparation, planning, persistence. The paperwork will kill you if you don't have systems in place. You just have to have. I've had too many situations where people have been overwhelmed with the paperwork. I had contractors who didn't even know how much money they were owed. I had staff at one point when I was running I was the project director for the DBE Support Center for New Jersey Transit on the Hudsonburg and Light Rail project. And we were having so much trouble getting these little small reports, a real easy thing to fill out, letting us know, did you get paid, how much you got paid, and when did you get paid? And, and we couldn't even get that document. And so I sent staff out to go and check on some of the contractors, and they came back with like, you won't believe with what we saw. Papers overflowing everywhere. No, you got to have help. You got to have assistance. You have to have someone in there that can help you wade through that paperwork. And working with someone right now who's desperate to hire someone to help them with the paperwork, which I'm waiting on some of that paperwork so I can finish their certification. So I'm literally putting a word out on Facebook Live and speaking to people on his behalf and, referring them.
Okay.
Just that it's just that deep. Got to have your basic systems in place to run a business, to run an office, and to be able to manage the documentation that's required, especially if if you're on an RFP, if you're on a contract of any sort. You've got to be able to document everything.
Right. And that's a lot like what I see when I'm working with businesses on financing. Many times people don't get financing because they don't get all the paperwork in. So, as a small business owner, there's so many things you need to know. There's so many things that you need to do. So it can be overwhelming, of course. However, if you're going to be successful, you can't let that hold you back. And sometimes you need to make an investment in getting the help you need so that you can do that successfully, or you're always going to be stuck. So, certifications, one of the things I hear a lot about and everybody's excited about is I want to be 8A. So what is 8A, and when should you, or, when would you know if you should consider 8A?
So 8A is a federal government certification. And it's like, everybody wants that cert at some point or another. It's the creme de la creme. It is a set aside program. 5% goals are on that program. And the good thing is, Andrew, I don't know if you're aware of this or not. It used to be up until this year, you could not earn more than $250,000 in revenue if you were going to apply. Now, it's an economic and social disadvantage certification. So you have to prove that you're economically disadvantage and social disadvantage. The other part of that is you want to make sure that you are financially capable of running this contract. So you have to look at all of the variables that will be included in that. And don't think that, even though at some point, there are some agencies that are paying really, really fast turnaround, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to see your payment in 15 days or 30 days or whatever it is. So you need to come in knowing that you can fund this contract for at least minimum 60 days, just to have that comfort zone. And remember that when you're submitting those invoices, um, it's the countdown doesn't begin until it's an approved invoice.
Right. Okay. So, when you're doing this, all those things are key. However, as a business owner, you're going out there and you're winning a contract. What are some key things that you need to be able to do to maintain contracts? And are there different things to renew? Do you have to renew every time, or can you continue on contracts?
Okay, let me just say this. First and foremost, for those who have never done this before, I would strongly encourage you to just come in as a subcontractor, or if they're putting together a team, so that it's not all on you. You need to get your feet wet. Now I'm going to go back to construction because that's my background. From that first job working with Gannett Fleming on that huge project, rail project, to going to work with Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and then as a consultant with New Jersey Transit. It just like amazes me how this happened. I don't even understand it, but it was all transportation agencies and transportation-based projects. So it's like blowing my mind how all of this transpired. But I strongly encourage people to subcontract or be a part of a team so that you can learn the ropes, learn what, if you're working here, get this, like the federal government also has, they're big companies that do business with them, really huge, right? But they have what they call small business liaison officers, SBLOs. And they have goals too that they have to meet. So I've seen companies that have worked with a large company on federal contracts. They're subcontractors, so they're actually working for the prime. But in time, they were able to go after contracts on their own with the Fed. Bottom line is, get some experience first in understanding what it's going to take for you to be able to thrive, not just survive, as you said, but to thrive in that federal government contract. And even if it's not the feds, look, City of Newark, they've been doing this project for the water lines, right? And I know some people that have been on that project, and it has been pretty lucrative, very lucrative for some.
So,
and I know some who were looking for opportunities to be subs. It's not simple. There's challenges, but that's when you have to have your paperwork in order. You want to make sure that if something goes a little kaflooey and you're not seeing your funds coming in, you can track every single thing, every single material that was used, every hour that was spent, everything that you put in originally, what you were billing for when you first signed up the contract with that prime.
okay. So
again, have your paperwork in order. You need to have some people, or look, we have virtual assistants today that can help you with that. You just want somebody that knows what you do in that industry that can help you.
Okay. No, that's excellent. I mean, I know we could go on and on because there's so much to this and so much to learn. And this has been helpful just for me, and I'm sure for everybody else who's tuned in. We've got a few minutes left because we're coming up on the hour. Time flies when you're having fun. So, is there anything that you want to leave people with that they should know or be thinking about in terms of contracting and figuring out what direction they should take?
I think I've said this before, and I know I said this when I was speaking with Art earlier. Know what your lane is and look for the opportunities in your lane, and keep an open mind. There's so much to learn. Even I'll give you an example. The Dwayne Reeds that are out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's cleaning for them. How are they contracting? Learn how they're doing it. Is it coming through corporate? Is corporate doing, putting out the contract? Or are the individual stores doing it? Or is there a list that they go to? How do you get on that list? Learn how they do business.
Okay. So, so the more you know, the faster you
The
grow.
more you grow.
So, okay. So it's about learning and preparing, which is key. No, this is
Networking is key.
network.
Going to the matchmakers. Now they're virtual. Like I said earlier, here's one. So Eastern Minority Supplier Diversity Council is doing a healthcare industry matchmaker and forum. Now I wrote a book on matchmaking. And I
So,
used to put on matchmakers as well as expos with matchmakers. And I actually would do some with down there in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. I
okay.
can't remember the name of the organization now, but bottom line is this: you want to get in front of the people that you want to do business with. Now, if you're not interested in the healthcare industry, you don't need to be involved in this. PSE&G has a matchmaker coming up very shortly. You may
Okay.
want to take advantage of that, but again, read who's going to be there that is buying what you sell. If they're not buying what you're selling, the other thing you might want to do is go, well, it's difficult to do that now because they're virtual.
Right.
But you may be able to network with other business owners at these events who may need your goods and services for
Okay.
the contracts that they want to go after for these organizations that maybe are not buying directly from you, but that business owner, that small minority woman, veteran, LGBTQ business owner. Hope I covered everybody. If I didn't, I apologize. There's so many
Okay.
acronyms now.
So,
You can
okay.
take advantage of it. Get out there and let people know that you exist,
And
what you do, how great you are. Have some testimonials to back you up. Make sure that you're existing online. Stop hiding. Have a website. Find what, depending on what it is you do for a living, what your business is about. Make sure you're on some platform of social media. Don't disregard it. Um, you know, LinkedIn for us, I tell every business owner they need to be on LinkedIn no matter what and be
right.
active.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, basically, you have to run your business professionally and be doing the stuff that you should be doing anyways. But even more so if you're going to be contracting, because you're going to be looked at many different ways and the expectations and the requirements are higher. So no, this is great. Thank you for joining us. Definitely, talking about this is key for business owners. So, Leadership Live at 8:05 every Tuesday night. We've had Stephanie D. Burroughs, CEO of Stephanie Speaking LLC, talking about demystifying the diversity certification conundrum. And, along with that, she has a course on Small Business Pro University by the same name. And, it's an opportunity to learn a lot more about this topic. And of course, you can reach out to Stephanie in the chat or in the stream. We've got her LinkedIn profile, so you can connect with her there and her contact info. So definitely that's important. Art, you want to share anything before we wrap up?
No, I think that, I really enjoyed the conversation. And I think that the principles that Stephanie has baked into her business model, grit with the grounded, resilient, intentional, and tenacious, are certainly four key elements that every leader should bake into their persona so they can accomplish more. And it takes hard work, it takes commitment, and to accept the responsibility to lead. And all of us don't have a dad that was a Marine Corps person that starts bringing us up in those leadership traits. But you can find those leadership skills and hear other people tell you how to acquire those leadership skills on Tuesday night when it's Leadership Live at 8:05. So thanks to Andrew, we have this forum every Tuesday for leaders that are on the way up. So be here often. And I like to repeat the slogan that's on the cover of Andrew's book. I know Stephanie said it earlier, and I'll say it again. The more you know, the faster you grow. That's what leaders do.